Good evening, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. This is IMAX Sports North Football video, and today I'm going over my Week 12 Power Rankings for the 2024 NFL season. I do Power Rankings on the channel every single week. It's crazy that we are 2/3 of the way through the season, but with that being said, let's get right into the video. First off, we have the dumpster fire. We have the Raiders at 32, we have the Giants at 31, we have the Panthers at 30, we have the Jaguars at 29, and we have the Browns at 28. The Raiders stay at 32. They were at 32 last week. They stay there this week. They had an okay start to the season, beating the Ravens, but since then, after starting, I believe, either 2-3 or 2-4, they have gone on a 4 or 5 game losing streak, and they are not even playing the best teams. They're playing some pretty bad teams. The Raiders are not having a good go at it the second half of the season. They lost by 2 scores this week against the Dolphins. The Dolphins obviously are a decent team, but they have not been showing up recently. Moving on to 31, we have the Giants. The Giants were on bye this week, so they did not move at all in the power rankings. They actually moved down 1 spot because one of the teams below them moved up. The Panthers also did not change. They stayed at 30. And then the Jaguars and the Browns have both dropped. The Jaguars dropped significantly after they got demolished by the Saints. They got thoroughly beaten 52-6, which was a scoregami. Never had a 52-6 score in the NFL before. And then we had the Browns game, where they also had a pretty poor showing against... Sorry, the Browns were against the Saints. They lost 35-14. The Jaguars were against the Lions, and they got demolished 52-6. But yeah, the Browns lost to the Saints, who are not a great team, and they got killed by the Saints, and then the Jaguars got killed by the Lions. The Browns people thought that they would be improving with Jameis Winston at quarterback. Jameis Winston has had a decent go at it as quarterback, but they haven't been able to win a whole lot of games. The Browns have been decreasing in the rankings pretty much the entirety of the season. After starting off with a couple of wins, they've only gotten 1 win over the last 7 or 8 weeks, and they haven't even been playing great competition. They've basically been the team that bad teams go to get their 1 win of their 3 or 4 game span, and then leave. So the Browns have been relegated to the dumpster fire. And the Jaguars, they have Mac Jones at quarterback. Mac Jones has not been playing well. He's been playing worse than Trevor Lawrence, and they have not been able to move the ball down the field. Moving on to quarterback questions. At 27, we got the Patriots. At 26, we got the Tennessee Titans. At 25, we got the New York Jets. And at 24, we got the New Orleans Saints. I got to be changing up this category soon because... Or at least the Patriots got to be dropped down to the dumpster fire and moved up to the next one, because I think that Drake May is becoming less and less of a question. Drake May put up almost 300 yards this week. He did have 1 interception towards the end of the game, but it was a miscommunication between him and the receiver. For the most part, Drake May has had a phenomenal rookie season. There are still some questions about what he's actually going to end up being, or what he is for this season, but Drake May's played very well. We were not able to beat the Rams this week, but that was mostly a defensive problem. We were playing catch-up the entirety of the game, and it was unfortunate. The Titans were on bye this week, so Tennessee did not play a game this week. They played the Vikings. They got killed by they played an okay game against the Vikings, but the Titans' quarterback situation with Mason Rudolph is not phenomenal. Mason Rudolph played well against the Patriots, and he's had some games here and there. But for the most part, the Tennessee Titans have not been able to win games with Mason Rudolph. They still are stuck at 2 wins, but they do have the tiebreaker over the Patriots, which is why I'm keeping them slightly above us for right now. Once the Patriots get another win, we'll be able to leapfrog Tennessee, but for right now, Tennessee's staying above us. At 25, we have the Jets. The Jets have beaten the Titans, and they have also beaten the Patriots. But we've gone 50-50 with them. This week, the Jets lost to the Colts. The Colts are a team that many people would believe the Jets should be beating on a regular basis going into the season. The Jets were seen as a Super Bowl contender, and the Colts were seen as a team relegated to being relegated to mediocrity. That is true for the Colts. They're 5-6. They've pretty much been about 500 the entirety of the season. But the Jets have not been able to string together wins. They've barely been able to get any wins. Aaron Rodgers is having one of the worst seasons of his career. I believe he has a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, which isn't terrible for a quarterback, but it's bad for him. And he has not been able to move the ball, even with Devontae Adams, with Allen Lazard, with all the guys that can't think of their main wide receiver's name, but with Breece Hall, right? They have not been able to move the ball down the field. The Jets offense was able to score this week. They scored up 27 points, but the defense let up for once, and they weren't able to close it out. Again, the Saints, they had a demolition this week. They beat the Browns 35-14. Derek Carr is not the solution for the Saints. I can say that for right now. The Saints have not been able to figure out with Derek Carr, even though they still have plenty of good weapons around the quarterback. They'll win games here and there. They're now up to 4 wins. They've won 2 weeks in a row, but it's just not the solution. Derek Carr is not the solution for this team. Moving on to falling down, we got the Cowboys at 23, we got the Bears at 22, and we have the Buccaneers at 21. The Cowboys will be playing tomorrow night. They have not played yet this week. They'll be playing the Texans. I do expect them to lose. If they lose, they'll probably stay where they are. They might move below the Saints, but I'm really not moving them any further down for right now. I really don't see them losing to the Texans, mostly because I don't think that beating the Texans, mostly because I don't think that Houston will lose 3 games in a row. I think that CJ Stroud's going to figure it out, and the Dallas defense really has not been that dominant this year. At 22, we have the Bears. The Bears continue to lose every single game that they play. This week, they actually had a very close game. They were almost able to beat the Packers, but they missed a game-winning field goal right at the very end. It wasn't even too long. It was a mid-40-yard field goal, and so the Bears were unable to claim the victory. I do think Caleb Williams will have a good career, but he has disappointed the most so far out of the rookie quarterbacks. He started off somewhat strongly, and then he has really regressed. He hasn't thrown a lot of touchdown passes over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and for the most part, he has had a disappointing second half of the season. At 21, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers have not been the same team ever since both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans went down. They were on bye this week, so they didn't really change anywhere, but Tampa has really slowed down after having a phenomenal start. People thought that they were going to be winning their division. They thought they'd be in contention for not even the playoffs, but to actually play well in the playoffs, but it is not going their way for right now. Moving on to could be good, we got the Bengals at 20 and we have the Colts at 19. The Bengals have dropped to 4-7 after the loss to the Chargers this week. Joe Burrow is not the problem. It's the defense. Joe Burrow can always play better, but he's putting up MVP statistics right now, and the team is 4-7. I still think that the Bengals can make the playoffs. I believe that they can go on a 6-0 run and finish the season 10-7. I do think that that's possible. I think it's unlikely, but it is possible with this team. Joe Burrow, and if Joe Burrow wins 6 games in a row and he has a phenomenal statistics during that time period, he could be in the MVP running, but they need to win the next 6 games in a row. The Bengals have had an unfortunate season this year, and Joe Burrow's kind of having a Drew Brees-like season, one of those years when he'd go 7-9 or 8-8 or 9-7, and not really do much, even if he has the world's best counting stats. And then at 19, we have the Colts. Colts are the weirdest team in the league this year. They've been up and down. They've mostly been about 500. I do think that next year with Anthony Richardson, with some new players around him, the Colts will be able to do something. I do think that they have a lot of potential. I think that they're going to be growing a lot over the next couple of years, and I think that the Jets, they got the best version of the Jets this week. They got the best version the Jets could have given them, and the Jets were still unable to win. So kudos to the Colts. Great game this week. And they're now up to 5-6. Moving on to could be good. We got the 49ers at 18. We got the Falcons at 17. We got the Seahawks at 16, Rams at 15, and the Dolphins at 14. The 49ers dropped to 5-5 this week. They had been slowly improving after their dismal start. I believe they were 1-3 or 2-4 to begin the season. They were able to slowly bring their way up to 5-4. And then they were unable to beat the Seahawks this week in their divisional matchup. The Seahawks split with the 49ers this season, so the 49ers have dropped down to 5-5. And the Seattle Seahawks have moved up to, I believe, 5-5 or 6-5. Seattle is either at 500 or slightly above 500 now. The Seahawks have had a weird season of their own. They've majorly beaten teams they're supposed to beat, and then they've lost to teams they're supposed to lose to. Geno Smith is one of those guys where he's going to be keeping them in the running, but they're not really going to be going anywhere, and they're not going to be having any significant runs in the playoffs. But they could have a couple of decent years, which they've been having recently, and they're going to beat some good teams like the 49ers. The Falcons, the Falcons lost this week. They've dropped down to 6-5, and Kirktober is over. So Kirktober is no longer continuing in November. Kirktober is the month of October, where Kirk Cousins plays his best football, and that has not been continuing in November. They started off the month 5-3. They are now 6-5. The Falcons had a horrendous game this week. They only put up one score, and they are not looking to be contenders at this point in the season. They are going to be winning their division, most likely. I can't imagine any other team winning their division. They are the best team in their division, but I can't see them going anywhere in the playoffs. The Rams and the Dolphins are the two teams that are rising up, let's say. The other three are kind of in purgatory. The Rams and the Dolphins are rising up. The Rams have gotten all their guys back from injury. The Dolphins got Tua back from injury. The Dolphins lost their first couple games with Tua returning because they're against two of the toughest teams in the league. But since then, they were able to beat the Rams last week, and they're able to get the win this week. The Rams, on the other hand, once they got all their guys back, they have been hitting the ground running. They are back up to 500. Their only loss since getting all their receivers back was against the Dolphins last week. So that's what gives the Dolphins a tiebreaker. Even though the Dolphins have a worse record, they're 4-6 and the Rams are 5-5. But these two teams are definitely going to be gunning for the playoffs, and they're definitely in a good position to make the playoffs. They both have capable teams. They've both been in the playoffs a lot recently, and I think that they're both ready to take that step to actually make it to the playoffs. Moving on to the current playoff teams, we got the the Broncos at 13, the Chargers at 12, the Commanders at 11, the Texans at 10, and the Cardinals at 9. Bo Nix has had the biggest come up over the course of the season. Jaden Daniels has kind of been the same guy the whole season. Caleb Williams has kind of gone down. Patriots, blanking on my own guy's name. Drake Mays, he's had a short season so far. But Bo Nix did not start off great. He started off with like 4 or 5 picks in the first couple games. Since then, he has settled down on the picks, and he has been really cranking out those touchdowns. The Broncos had a phenomenal game this week, offensively and defensively. They are firing on all cylinders. They beat the Falcons. They demolished the Falcons in a game where it should have been a close game at the very best. At worst, they should have been killed, right? And Bo Nix is playing great football. Bo Nix looks like a veteran quarterback, and I'm excited to see where he goes for the rest of the season. The Chargers were able to get the win over the Bengals this week, improving their record to 7-3. For the most part, the Chargers have only beaten teams with a record below 500. The Bengals obviously are a good team, but they still are below 500. They still have a bad defense, and so it's not the world's most impressive win. Justin Herbert also, again, is not having his greatest season. He's having a relatively mediocre, if not bad season. Bad for his standards, mediocre for the league standards. Their defense has been carrying them, and this is mostly because they're against not great teams. So, with that being said, I still need to see more from the Chargers. I need to see them beat some competitive teams before I can move them any higher. The Commanders are falling down a little bit. They've lost 2 games in a row. They are now down to 7-4. They have lost their division with their loss to the Eagles this week, and I think that the Eagles will continue to win that division and carry on to actually win it. With that being said, the Commanders should be making the playoffs in the NFC. It's a great rookie season for Jaden Daniels, and they're playing solid. The Texans are moved down to number 10. They are playing the Cowboys tomorrow. If they do win that game, they'll stay at number 10. They will not be moving above the Cardinals. I don't expect them to lose, but if they do lose, then they'll be moving down to 13, below the Broncos, for the worst team in this category. Houston's lost 2 games in a row. And again, part of that's because Nico Collins has been out. Nico Collins is back this week. They have all of their guys. They should be firing on all cylinders offensively. And for the most part, CJ Stroud has regressed ever so slightly in his second year. He has not had that killer instinct this season. I thought he'd be taking a slight step up. He took a very minor step back, but he has not made that next step to become an elite quarterback yet. He's still playing phenomenal, obviously. He's easily a top 10, possibly top 6 or 7 quarterback. But for right now, he needs to take the next step in order for the Texans to be a top 5 team. The Cardinals are at number 9. The Cardinals are 6-4 after starting off the season. I believe I believe they've won 5 games in a row. I think they started off 1-4 or maybe 2-4, and they've won 4 or 5 games in a row. They had one of the hardest schedules in the league to start off the season. Now they've had some easier games. They've been able to garner some wins. I do think that the Cardinals are a formidable opponent. I think that they're going to be making a statement in the playoffs, and I can't imagine them losing their division. The Rams are only a game behind, and they have a solid thing going for them with all their receivers back. So this will be an interesting fight between the Rams. Actually, the whole division's within a game. The Rams, the Seahawks, the Niners, the Cardinals are all within a game. I think that the Arizona has the advantage right now, but I can really see that division falling any direction at this point. Moving on to the strong contenders, we have the Ravens at 8, the Packers at 7, and we have the Eagles at number 6. The Packers won this week. They won their game. Again, it was a very close game against the Bears. Jordan Love has had an up-and-down season. It's a very Brett Favre-like season. A lot of touchdowns, a lot of picks, gunslinging quarterback right there. And they did move down because the Eagles have been dominating. They did move down in a win, but that's just simply because of how good the Eagles have been. Also because the Bills leapfrogged them. So they passed the Ravens, the Bills, and the Eagles passed them. The Eagles have been dominating. They started off the season 1-2, I believe, and they've won, I believe, 7 games in a row. I was thinking that the Eagles, because of their poor end of the season last year and because of their mediocre start to the season this year, the Eagles have been I've been underestimating them the entirety of the season. They have been really turning it on. Nick Sirianni's offense is back in full swing. Jalen Hurts is in full swing, and the Saquon Barkley decision has been phenomenal. Saquon Barkley has been so good for this team. He's been able to stay healthy, and he has been arguably a top 2 running back, if not the best running back in the league this season. The Eagles are a dominant force right now, and so that's why they're up to number 6. The Ravens have fallen down to number 8. Tough loss this week for them. Again, it's a game that if they lose, it's not the biggest shock in the world, but I mean, with Lamar Jackson playing the way that he's been, this was a huge loss for them. They needed to win that game if they wanted to win their division. Now the division seems to be almost locked up with the Steelers win this week. Derrick Henry was not utilized a lot. He only had 10 carries on the ground. And then Lamar, and most of that was because they were catching up the entirety of the game, but Lamar Jackson just had a really poor showing. And it is not going to help his MVP campaign to have 4, 5, 6 losses, especially if he does not continue to have his record-breaking quarterback rating. So the Ravens are not having their best season ever. They're still having a great year, but they need to kick it into gear if they want to be in contention for their division. Moving on to the NFL's elite, we got the Vikings at 5, the Chiefs at 4, Steelers at 3, the Bills at 2, and the Detroit Lions at 1. The Vikings won their game this week. They wasn't the world's most life-changing game. They beat the Titans. Not a whole lot to say there. Moving on to Kansas City, the Kansas City Chiefs lost their first game of the season, so they have been dropped down to number 4 in the power rankings. They will be playing the Steelers coming up soon. That's going to be a huge game for seeding. If the Steelers continue to be dominant and they win that game, Kansas City will be bumped down to the 3rd seed in the AFC because they will have lost to both Buffalo and the Steelers. But their first loss was this week to Buffalo. Part of that was because the Buffalo Bills offense is just too good for the Chiefs defense to make that big of a role in the game. The Chiefs offense really still cannot score. Patrick Mahomes had 2 more picks. He's 11 picks in 10 games. And it's not going well for Kansas City. I think that obviously they have a great record, but I just don't think that the offense is where it needs to be for them to be winning playoff games. Moving on to the Steelers at number 3. Russell Wilson has played phenomenal this season. I am so happy that Russell Wilson is on a good team. He's playing well, and he is having success. Russell Wilson is one of my favorite quarterbacks. I love Russell Wilson. I like Mike Tomlin. I respect him a lot. Obviously, we've had some huge rivalries, but if the Patriots are not playing, then I will be rooting for the Steelers. I think that this team is a phenomenal team. I think it's a great conglomeration of players, and I just like to see this team be successful. They beat the Ravens this week. I was waiting for that one big win to really put them into the top 3. This was that big win to clinch their not to clinch their division, but to get a commanding lead in their division. And now they are 8-2, and they are cruising. Buffalo beat Kansas City this week, so they also moved up a whole bunch of spots. I've been waiting again for Buffalo to get that one win where I really say, yes, that's what the Bills are like this year. They do be like that. And they got it this week. Josh Allen played a great game. The Bills played a great game. And the Bills have moved up to number 2. And then, of course, the Lions, they scored 50 points this week. Again, their opponent had 6. Again, we have another scoregami with the Lions having an insane point differential in a single game. So, yeah, Lions are number 1. They should be a number 1. They'll be a number 1 for presumably the rest of the season, unless they start losing game after game. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I love doing these videos, and I love hearing your comments. So, I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.